Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Tennessee Titans are studying up on who they need to take number 1 overall. Also, are the Houston Rockets finally for real? And can they get healthy at least? And nobody, and I mean nobody, should be signing Aaron Rodgers.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
In case you hadn't heard, the Tennessee Titans hold the number 1 overall pick in the 2025 NFL Draft. Our pal Tyler Rowland was with me in Indianapolis, accumulating information, trying to figure out what is going to happen at the top of the draft. Tyler, after everything we saw, everything we heard, and I'm not talking about the cigar bar things that happen at 12 o'clock at night, where do you think the Tennessee Titans are leaning with the number 1 overall pick?
I think they absolutely want to trade back. And, you know, we're hearing all kinds of good things about Cam Ward. And I have no doubt that Cam Ward was great in the interviews. I love Cam Ward's demeanor. I think he has the right demeanor to do things. He's serious, he's focused and all of that. But I think the same thing. Sometimes we get bored with information around this time of year. And there are certain things that we've accepted about this draft class that just kind of get boring to say, and we want to change it up. This is not a great draft class up top. These quarterbacks are not as highly ranked as maybe the top 4 or 5 quarterbacks from last year's draft class. And we can get bored and say, oh, these quarterbacks can change a franchise and all that. But I think the Tennessee Titans, who are really in year 1 of what they want to do to kind of turn this thing around with Mike Borgonzi as the new general manager, nothing kickstarts that process like trading back, getting additional capital. This is a meat and potatoes draft. You want to have as many shots as possible in a draft class that isn't super loaded up top. It's more just kind of good middle class. So I think right now we could talk about which player the Titans would lean to, but I think it is clear that their preference remains that they want to trade down with this pick.
Okay, but you mentioned, here's the problem, is there needs to be a team that wants to trade up. And this is not a class that is top heavy. It is not a class where people are in love with these quarterbacks. So if you're the Titans, how do you convince someone to move up? And in this case, whomst, Ty, like who are you going to get to move up?
You know what you do? You leak that Cam Ward was absolutely exceptional in his meetings. You leak that Shedeur Sanders was unprofessional and didn't impress, which is, you know, over the last 12 hours, multiple reports. Todd McShay's on his podcast saying, I talked to multiple teams who said he just didn't take it seriously. So Shedeur Sanders, not as valuable, no alternative. Cam Ward, more valuable because of how impressive he was in the meetings. That's how you do it. Also, you hear the reports, the Browns love Shedeur Sanders. The Browns, well, if you sit at 3 Giants, you're not going to get either of the quarterbacks because someone's going to take Ward at 1 and Shedeur's going to go 2. You missed out on Matthew Stafford. You're totally desperate. You got to save your job. Right now, what the Titans need to do is capitalize on front offices and head coaches that are more desperate than they are. And that's exactly what the Giants and the Browns, and I wouldn't say the Raiders or the Jets, really. I don't think they make the move up with how much it would cost them. But it's hard to not look at the Giants right now and say everything that's happening just puts them in a light of they have to make a move. And I think the Titans, perfect possible. I think the Titans would take Abdul Carter, number 1. If they could trade back to number 3 and still get Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter with an additional first-round pick next year, like, what an absolute steal. What a great start to the Mike Borgonzi era in Tennessee. I think that is the ideal outcome. And no matter how much we're sold Cam Ward, I still don't think that the Titans want to take him number 1 overall. If so, they wouldn't be hawking the pick the way that they are. Did the Bears do this last year? No, they did not. So I think actions speak louder than words. And no matter what we hear from the Titans about the quarterbacks, I don't think that they want to take them.
All right, let's say the New York Giants bring in a certain quarterback that I may be familiar with. Mr. Aaron Rodgers ends up being the quarterback of the New York Giants by draft day. Then what do the Tennessee Titans do?
Well, I think that's the play for the Giants. They need to get a veteran quarterback soon so that they have a leverage play against the Titans so they can go back to the table and say, hey, we're not desperate. We'll ride with Aaron Rodgers for a year, and we'll take a quarterback next year. If we're going to trade up and give a ton of picks, we can do it next year too. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's the play for the Giants. But if the Titans don't have someone come calling for that pick and they have to stick and pick, a lot of people are starting to shift to Cam Ward. And again, I think it's just kind of that time of year where things happen. I know that it sounds crazy because the Titans have a need at quarterback, but that's the quickest way to get yourself fired. Buy yourself some time, build the roster around whatever quarterback you're going to have. I still think that the Tennessee Titans would take Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter if for some reason Abdul Carter at the pro day, that injury resurfaces and clearly shows signs of hurting him. They probably pivot to Abdul Carter, but I have a hard time believing that the Titans still aren't looking for a trade down or willing to go with Carter at number 1.
You can stay up to date on the Tennessee Titans by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Titans on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. You're Locked On Sports today. Coming up, are the Rockets for real? Before we attempt to answer that one, T. Higgins will not be a free agent. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for an even bigger payout, you can combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting feature because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether I'm backing my team for a late-game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch 3, I never feel like I miss my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. Tonight's NBA slate includes a couple of home dogs, but man, none as far as the down so bad Bulls. Chicago hosts the Cleveland Cavaliers, and they're pretty big underdogs. FanDuel has the Bulls 11.5-point dogs at home. Will they howl? No, it's the Bulls. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. The Cincinnati Bengals made sure T. Higgins would not hit the open market on Monday by placing the franchise tag on him for the second straight offseason. The team announced they are continuing negotiations for a long-term contract with Higgins. Locked On Bengals has more.
This needed to happen. It was always the fallback plan is really not the right word. It was always the plan if they didn't get a long-term deal done with T by Tuesday. And so doing it on Monday, hopefully what it does, Jake, is it gets both sides armed, ready, locked in to getting a long-term deal done. Because I think that's the intention. And that's what needs to happen now is this can't be they have until July 15th to do so. This can't be a summer thing. I don't even want it to be a spring thing. We're not in spring yet. It should be a this week thing. Get it done because I don't think it shouldn't be at least that hard for both sides to overcome whatever hurdles are there to get it done now that they know that the tag is in place.
One player who will be a free agent is reigning Super Bowl champion Darius Slay as the Eagles cut ties with him on Monday.
At the same time, I think Howie Roseman is making the right decision by releasing him today. And I think it's really good to see Howie Roseman learning from the past, as he always does. But this is a new mistake in the past that he has learned from. And it's removing his heart from very tough roster decisions he has to make after a Super Bowl win. Unlike in 2017, where Howie just it's understandable, right? That was your first championship. You are so indebted to those players that got you that first ring. Howie, though, could not remove the heart. It's like he rewarded players for what they did rather than what they were going to do. So he doubled down on players like Alshon Jeffrey, Jason Peters, guaranteed those contracts, spread money around with players that in a few years, when that cap hit comes knocking, those players still aren't going to be worth having on the books. You look at his loyalty as well to past legends and I'm a hypocrite for this one, but at the time I loved it. But now we know it was the wrong decision, the wrong approach, bringing back somebody like Deshaun Jackson in 2019. There were so many different reunions with the Eagles and, a guy like Vinny Curry, who had a solid year coming back after he left for Tampa Bay after the Super Bowl year. But overall, I think Howie Roseman, his heart was involved too much in a lot of these decisions. And it's good to see that he continues to learn from his past, this time learning from how to handle things, not post-Super Bowl loss, but post-Super Bowl win.
What exactly are the Minnesota Vikings going to do at quarterback? Are they ready to hand the reins to J.J. McCarthy? Well, the reporting late Monday night came out that the Vikings will not use the franchise tag on Sam Darnold, but the two sides are working on trying to figure something out. Whether or not they're able to do that, Vikings are not going to have assurances that they'll have Sam Darnold, at the very least, to trade him. That's a pretty big chip gone for them, unless they pay up. The 27-year-old coming off a career year, and would, if he hits the open market, be one of the most coveted and expensive free agents on the market. Elsewhere on the professional hardwood, the Warriors look to stack a win while on the East Coast against the Hornets.
3 Golden State Warriors players record double-doubles in the game. It's Draymond Green, it's Brandon Bajemski, and it's Steph Curry. But it's Buddy Hield who leads the way for Golden State with 22 points in the game. It was not a pretty win by any means. In fact, it could be described as painful, as we saw Steph Curry hobbling in the game. Brandon Bajemski had to go to the locker room. He would return, and then Gary Payton left with an apparent nose injury. We did not see the return of Payton in the game. The Warriors really struggled to shoot it in the first half, shooting around 25% from 3 for the majority of it. They woke up in the second half, knocking down 36% of their shots. Brandon Bajemski with 19. Buddy Hield, did I mention 22 to lead the way? They're now 12-1 of the Warriors when he scores more than 18 points in a game. That is their secret sauce. And then Steph Curry had 20 points in the game today. 10 assists, too, for Steph Curry, meaning back-to-back games he has reached double figures in that regard. Warriors win 119-101 over the Charlotte Hornets. They take care of business. Again, not a pretty game, but it's one you just had to win, and they get the job done in that regard. Now 8-1 with Jimmy Butler on the floor. 0-1 without him, obviously. Butler had 13 points in the game today, including 6 of 6 from the charity stripe. Locked on Warriors, we got the post-game coverage. Check us out on YouTube.
Had everyone been healthy, a Monday night battle between the Thunder and the Rockets could have been a clash between two Western Conference contenders. But for the Houston Rockets, not everyone is. A 137-128 win for the Oklahoma City Thunder, the number 1 team in the Western Conference, ensued. Jackson Gallen from Locked On Rockets joins me now. And Jackson, no Fred VanVleet in this game, no Amen Thompson in this game, no Tari Eason in this game. But this is a Rockets team that, for long stretches in the West, looked like one of the top 3 teams in the West. What do you make of them at this moment in early March?
Well, it feels like almost kind of a cop-out to say, well, injuries kind of took their toll with this team. Maybe they overachieved a little bit for the better part of that, first 2 or 3 months of the season while they were one of the top teams in the Western Conference. But this Rockets team is kind of like, there's links in a chain, right? They're greater than the sum of their parts. And the moment you start taking out 1 or 2 or 3 of those different links, then overall the entire product just becomes weaker, unfortunately. But the biggest, most important piece that the Rockets were missing, and they only recently just got him back, was actually the loss of Jabari Smith Jr. in their starting lineup. They boasted one of the best starting lineups in the NBA up until his injury removed him from action. And they've sorely missed his presence out there on the floor, his length, his rebounding, his floor spacing ability on the offensive end, his defensive versatility, being able to guard 1 through 5. They can kind of throw out a little bit of a haymaker defensively by playing him as the small ball 5 without really giving up too much size or length or rebounding. And that was a tool that Ime Udoka used a lot in the early part of this season. So losing Jabari, and then subsequently you lost Tari Eason for 13 straight games. Then Fred VanVleet had an ankle injury that he only just recently returned from Saturday night against the Sacramento Kings, a game that the Rockets did lose. And apparently Fred VanVleet re-aggravated that same exact ankle in that game. So then you have Monday Night Basketball, Rockets versus Thunder, where the Rockets' first night of a back-to-back, Ime Udoka and company decided to kind of punt on this game by resting a lot of their usual heavy hitters, most of the starting lineup sitting out of this game in order to kind of give them the best shot possible against the Pacers Tuesday night. However, the Rockets' third stringers, the G League guys, the Vipers, they actually kind of took it to the Thunder here.
Well, and that's part of what I wanted to ask you about, because these kinds of moments can pay dividends, whether it's this year, next year. I mean, Reed Shepherd, 25 points on efficient shooting, 10 of 17. Cam Whitmore, 27 and 11 on efficient shooting, 10 of 19. It's a one-game sample, but these are guys that have a lot of talent. Reed Shepherd, of course, just the top 5 pick in this most recent draft. We've seen teams over the years, you bring these, as you're contending, you bring these young guys along, you give them intermittent opportunities, and then all of a sudden when you need them, they are there for you.
Absolutely. Look, I mean, there's a ton of talent up and down this Houston Rockets roster, and unfortunately, you can look at it 2 different ways. It's probably, honestly, for the best thing for their individual careers, for guys like Cam Whitmore, Reed Shepherd, to be in a winning situation, to see and experience what winning basketball is like this early in their career, as opposed to playing for a team like the Wizards or the Hornets and being able to get up, a billion shots a game and have no kind of expectation of what winning basketball is supposed to look like, unfortunately. But then you have these moments, right, where an opportunity does present itself, and Reed Shepherd, who, has been understandably a little bit disappointing as far as, a number 3 overall pick goes, but he hasn't had much opportunity with this Rockets team this season. This is easily the best game of his NBA career high 25 points, the good efficiency, showed a little bit more confidence, maybe some wiggle to his game in this one against OKC. And then Cam Whitmore, we know what he's capable of. He's an incredibly talented individual here in year 2, but he's been in and out of the Rockets rotation at times this season. All the talent in the world, just needs to get his head on his shoulders straight and, understand that he's playing for a defensive-minded head coach. If he's not locked in on defensive end, he's not going to get minutes. So you saw kind of a glimpse of a couple of the guys who unfortunately at this point have been kind of unfortunate casualties of the expedited process of this Houston Rockets rebuild. They are still 2 of the members of the quote-unquote core 7 of young, talented prospects that the Rockets have, but they're the guys that often get forgotten about because they're the ones that don't get that much attention or don't get that much developmental runway on a night-to-night basis.
So where do you size up this Rockets team if they are all healthy heading into the postseason? Because you look at the standings right now, Oklahoma number 1, Oklahoma City, the Lakers number 2, now with Luka Doncic. Ever heard of him? The Nuggets in 3rd, and then the Memphis Grizzlies in 4th place. Like, it kind of feels right that the Rockets are 5th right now.
I don't know if I would go so far as to say right, because at the end of the day, if these injuries didn't happen, Fred VanVleet's incredibly important to what this team does on a night-to-night basis. Losing him was a pretty massive blow, in conjunction with still missing Jabari Smith Jr. for that kind of really rough February that they had just before the NBA All-Star break kicked in. You still missed Tari Eason for those 13 games in there as well. So it's really easy to see. All 30 teams in the NBA could say, oh, well, if we were healthy, then XYZ would have happened. But it really does feel like this Rockets team, once they can get all their key guys back and health permitting, it feels like they could go on a strong run to close out the end of the year. They have one of the easiest strength of schedules remaining in the NBA this season. So that does bode well for them as far as potentially, trying to leapfrog a team or 2 up here in the standings. They have the tiebreaker against the Memphis Grizzlies. They're already up 1-0 against the Nuggets. They've got, maybe some luck on their side here would help, but I could still very much see this team securing home court advantage for what is going to be their first postseason run in the Ime Udoka era. It's just going to come down to getting back to the identity that they established for themselves earlier this season as a defensive juggernaut, a team that doubled down on their top 10 defense from last year. Then they became, for a pretty significant stretch of this season, they were the 2nd best defense, trailing only the OKC Thunder, who were running a historic defense this NBA season. So if you can get back to that early season identity and figure out the right pieces, and if Ime Udoka can press the right buttons along the way to close out this season, I don't think home court advantage is, too unreasonable to ask for this team.
You can stay up to date all year on the Houston Rockets by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Rockets on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, nobody needs to go sign Aaron Rodgers. The New York Giants are without a quarterback, only for like 40 years. There are some, not me, who would consider the G-men to be a potential suitor for Aaron Rodgers. All right, they might be, but I don't think it's a good idea. As Locked On NFL host Tony Wiggins and Julian Council discuss, nobody would be smart to add Aaron Rodgers.
I don't see why any team would be that interested in Aaron Rodgers outside of the fact, yes, he's going to be likely a first ballot Hall of Famer. I'm not trying to sit here and say that Aaron Rodgers has not been one of the all-time greatest quarterbacks, maybe the most talented player to ever play the position. But the Aaron Rodgers that we now have here in March of 2025 is not the Aaron Rodgers that we saw. Heck, I mean, 5 years ago in Green Bay, you look at the end of his tenure there at the Packers, that game on Sunday Night Football against the Lions, like where was the fight from Rodgers? Then he tears his Achilles 4 plays into the season a couple years ago. This past year was another disaster for the Jets. It just, I don't see why. I mean, I guess the Giants would want to do this because Daboll and Shane are fighting for their jobs. And John Mara came out there and said that he was going to be patient. He was going to see things through. And by seeing it through, it's not going out there and drafting a rookie quarterback, whether that could be Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, whoever they may think makes sense for them in this upcoming draft. They would need to get a veteran. And Rodgers already up in New York, could take the pressure. I've seen Sam Darnold's name thrown out there. I don't know why Darnold would want to go back into that pressure cooker of New York. That's not the kind of guy I think that can have success in that environment. I think the Jets mainly let him down, but still, I don't find him as the guy who would want to go back to New York to be back in all that media spotlight. So the Rodgers situation, it's interesting to me, but also kind of baffling when you just look at it just from this view where why is that why would it even be a top option? Like, good, as far as Patricia said, that he's not one of their top options, because I don't know why he would be.
Right. And when I think about it, man, I'll take Jameis Winston and his played well for 2 games and then turn back into Jameis Winston at game 3. I take that over. I take Aaron Rodgers at this point. But I do understand that Joe Shane and Brian Daboll may have to have something happen that saves their job, and they'll probably be dependent on a Hall of Famer more than they'll be dependent on somebody else at this point. But the Jets are sitting right there as a case study as why this could be a mistake on the field as well as financially. Now, I don't know if there's any offset language in his contract. I doubt that very seriously. And Rodgers may be on that. Look, I got enough money. I'll play for next to nothing, even though I doubt that very seriously.
Why would you want this? Why would you want to add this to your franchise? It would be one thing if Aaron Rodgers was 2021 MVP Aaron Rodgers. He's not. And all of a sudden, 2021 is a long time ago. That was the last time we saw Aaron Rodgers be worth the drama, the headache, the toxicity, the entitlement that he brings. It's 2025. That's a long time ago. The only reason, if you're the Giants, you want to bring in Aaron Rodgers is because you know the pressure is on from ownership that you better win right now. It would be an ass-covering move. And how often in the history of sports, much less the NFL, is a move like that, a CYA move like that, something that ends up working out well? Ultimately, you're probably just sending your team back. The best thing for the Giants to do is to draft a quarterback and give themselves a 4-year window, or at least a 2-year window, to figure this out. If you draft the quarterback, presumably they're going to give you some runway. If you bring in Aaron Rodgers and then it's over. It's over if you don't win right now. In a lot of ways, you are amping up the urgency to win. Whereas, okay, you draft a Cam Ward, a Shedeur Sanders, and you can point to all these things. Hey, look, this is a young quarterback. Let's give him time. Let's figure this out. I'm not the one, Brian Daboll can say, that made you draft Daniel Jones. I'm not the one that said hand out the extension to him. Give me a chance. That's not how the business works, though. Sorry. So a craven decision is going to be made. A rational decision is going to be made. And it's going to end up exactly the way you think. And finally, in delusional ownership news, which in a lot of cases is just ownership news, the Mavericks revealed on Monday that they are raising season ticket prices for the 2025-2026 campaign. You know, the team that just traded away one of the best basketball players in the world at the deadline, those Mavericks. The team said season tickets will go up by an average of 8.61% next season, and the increase is due to ongoing investment in the team and fan engagement. Not like the team on the court, not like that kind of engaging with the fans. I'm sure the response to this will be exactly what we all expect and not at all what the team is expecting. And if you're catching this episode after hearing your favorite Locked On show, make sure to subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Also, if you're a new subscriber to Locked On Sports Today, we're here for you with the biggest stories in sports every day. Coming up, Steph is at Madison Square Garden, but it's the Knicks who are expected to make a deep playoff run. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Go to our video on demand. Click on sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.